I planned to rent out my apartment, but when I came with the tenants, my sister and her fiance met me there. "Oh, Mom said we could stay here." She confirmed it, so I made one call, and then enjoyed watching their world crumble. I am Natalie, 32 years old, and I thought I had everything figured out. After years of saving every penny, I finally bought my dream apartment in downtown Chicago. But, when I decided to rent it out temporarily due to my career change, I never expected what would happen. That afternoon, as I arrived with Elijah and Isabella, my perfect new tenants, my sister Vanessa and her fiancé Trevor were lounging on my couch. Their first words, "Oh, Mom said." I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago. My childhood was relatively normal, until I turned 14 when my parents decided to get divorced. The split was amicable enough, but it changed our family dynamic forever. My father moved to another state for work, and my mother Diane was left to raise my younger sister Vanessa and me on her own. Vanessa is 5 years younger than me, and growing up she always had a habit of taking my things without asking. My favorite sweater would mysteriously end up in her closet. My homework would disappear right before class. My birthday money would vanish from my desk drawer. Each time I confronted her, she would either deny it or claim she thought I would not mind. And each time my mother would step in to defend her. "Natalie, you need to learn to share with your sister," my mother would say, completely ignoring the principle of asking for permission. "She looks up to you, and she just wants to be like her big sister." This pattern continued throughout our teenage years. While I was working part-time jobs to save for college, Vanessa was receiving new clothes and expensive birthday parties. My mother always had a justification ready. "Vanessa needs more support, or you are so independent, Natalie, you do not need as much help." By the time I left for college, I had learned to hide my important belongings and keep my plans to myself. I worked 2 jobs throughout university, maintaining a scholarship through sheer determination. Meanwhile, Vanessa attended a private college fully funded by our mother. I graduated with minimal student loans thanks to my hard work, but the inequity stung. After graduation, I landed a job in banking. The hours were brutal and the stress was overwhelming, but the pay was good. I lived frugally, sharing an apartment with 2 roommates, taking public transportation and cooking at home. Every extra dollar went into my savings account with a single goal in mind: buying my own place. 3 years ago, that dream finally became reality. I purchased a 2-bedroom apartment in a secure building with a doorman. It was not extravagant, but it was mine. I painted the walls, bought furniture I loved, and created a space that felt like home. That apartment represented my independence and security, something I had worked for without any financial help from my family. My mother and Vanessa came to my housewarming party. While my mother made comments about how I could have afforded something bigger if I had accepted her help, Vanessa wandered from room to room, eyeing my possessions. "This place is so cute," Vanessa said in that tone that always made me feel like she was simultaneously complimenting and criticizing me. "When I buy a place, I think I will go for something with more character though." I just smiled and refilled her wineglass. After years of dealing with her backhanded comments, I had learned to let them roll off my back. 6 months ago, I made a difficult decision to pivot my career. The banking hours were destroying my health, and an opportunity arose to move into financial planning. The work aligned better with my values, allowing me to help people manage their money, rather than just move it around for corporations. The catch was a temporary income reduction during the transition period. After running the numbers, I realized I could rent out my apartment for a year and stay with my friend Zoe, who had a spacious condo and was happy to have me as a roommate for a reduced rent. This arrangement would allow me to build a savings cushion while I established myself in my new role. The tenant search was exhaustive. I interviewed dozens of applicants, conducted background checks, and verified employment and rental histories. Eventually, I found Elijah and Isabella, a young professional couple with stable jobs and excellent references. He worked in software development, and she was a nurse at the university hospital. They were looking for a 1-year lease while they saved for their own place, which aligned perfectly with my timeline. We hit it off immediately during the viewing. They asked thoughtful questions about the neighborhood and building amenities. They treated my home with respect, admiring the features I had carefully selected. Most importantly, they understood that this was not just an investment property to me, but my home that I was temporarily entrusting to them. The contract was drawn up, the deposit was paid, and move-in day was scheduled. Everything was proceeding smoothly, and I felt confident in my decision. I had not mentioned my plans to my mother or Vanessa in detail, only saying that I was making some changes and staying with a friend for a while. Past experience had taught me that giving them too much information often led to complications. The day before the final walkthrough and key handover, I received a text from my mother, asking about my new job and living situation. I kept my response vague, saying that everything was going well, and that I would fill her in soon. In retrospect, I should have recognized this sudden interest as a warning sign. The morning of the final walkthrough arrived and I was excited about starting this new chapter. I had cleaned the apartment, thoroughly prepared a welcome basket for Elijah and Isabella, and created a detailed guide to the building and neighborhood. I was ready to hand over the keys and begin receiving the rental income that would provide a financial buffer during my career transition. I had no idea that my careful plans were about to collide with my family's sense of entitlement in a spectacular way. The day had started so well. The spring sun was shining, birds were chirping, and I had picked up coffee for myself, Elijah, and Isabella before meeting them at my apartment building. They had arrived right on time, professionally dressed, despite it being a Saturday, with a folder of documents and final payment ready. "We are so excited about moving in," Isabella said, as we rode the elevator to the 8th floor. "The location is perfect for both our commutes. And we promise to take great care of the place," Elijah added. "We know how much it means to you." I smiled, feeling confident in my choice of tenants. "I know you will. That is why I chose you over the other applicants." As the elevator doors opened, I led them down the hallway, explaining the recycling schedule and pointing out the fire exits. When we reached my door, I noticed it was slightly ajar. A chill ran down my spine. Had there been a break-in, I cautiously pushed the door open, signaling for Elijah and Isabella to wait. What I saw made my jaw drop. My sister Vanessa was sprawled across my sofa, scrolling through her phone, while her fiance Trevor was in my kitchen drinking from one of my mugs. Several boxes and suitcases were stacked by the entryway. "Vanessa, what are you doing here? How did you get in?" I stammered, completely blindsided. Vanessa looked up lazily and smiled. "Oh, hey sis. Surprise, Mom gave us her spare key. She told us you were staying at a friend's place for a while so we could use your apartment while we save for the wedding. Perfect timing, right? Our lease just ended." Trevor walked over, looking slightly uncomfortable but attempting a friendly smile. "Hey, Natalie. Thanks for letting us crash here. We really appreciate it." I stood frozen in the doorway, aware of Elijah and Isabella shifting awkwardly behind me. My mind raced, trying to process what was happening. My mother had a spare key for emergencies only, which she had apparently given to Vanessa without my knowledge or consent. There must be some mistake. I finally managed to say, "I am not staying at a friend's place. I am renting out the apartment. These are my tenants, Elijah and Isabella. They are moving in today." Vanessa smiled, faltered, and she sat up straight. "What? No, Mom specifically said you were not using the place and that we could stay here. She would not have told us that if you were renting it out." I turned to Elijah and Isabella, who were looking increasingly uncomfortable. "I am so sorry about this. There has been a misunderstanding. Would you mind waiting in the hallway for a few minutes while I sort this out?" They nodded and stepped back, closing the door partly behind them. I took a deep breath and turned back to Vanessa and Trevor. "Listen. I do not know what Mom told you, but this is my apartment. I make the decisions about who stays here. I have a legally binding contract with Elijah and Isabella. They have paid a deposit and first month's rent. They are moving in today." Vanessa's expression darkened. "Well, we have already moved half our stuff in, as you can see. We cannot just leave. We gave up our apartment. We have nowhere else to go." "That is not my problem," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You should have confirmed with me before assuming you could stay here." "Why would I need to confirm with you when Mom already said it was fine?" Vanessa shot back, her voice rising. "She said you were staying with Zoe for a while and that your place would be empty." "And you did not think to call me directly?" I asked, incredulous. Trevor, who had been quietly watching our exchange, finally spoke up. "I did suggest calling you first, but Vanessa said it would be fine since your mom had already approved it." Vanessa shot him a glare, and he immediately looked down at his feet. "Well, Mom does not have the authority to approve anyone staying in my apartment," I said firmly. "I bought this place with my own money. I pay the mortgage. I make the decisions." Vanessa pulled out her phone. "Let me call Mom and straighten this out. She will explain everything." As Vanessa dialed, I walked to the door and explained the situation briefly to Elijah and Isabella. "I am so sorry about this. My sister seems to think she can stay here, but I will resolve this quickly. Would you mind waiting just a bit longer?" They exchanged glances before Elijah spoke. "Of course, take your time. But we do need to know if we can move in today as planned. We have moved her scheduled for this afternoon." You will be able to move in today, I assured them, hoping I could make good on that promise. I returned to find Vanessa with the phone on speaker. Mom, tell Natalie what you told us about staying at her apartment, Vanessa was saying. My mother's voice came through the speaker, sounding confused at first, and then defensive. Natalie, are you there? Yes, I told Vanessa and Trevor. They could stay at your place while you were at Zoe's. You mentioned you were making changes and staying with a friend. I assumed your apartment would be sitting empty. It makes perfect sense for them to use it while they save for their wedding. I felt a familiar anger bubbling up inside me. Mom, you had no right to offer my apartment to anyone. I never said it would be empty. I am renting it out. The tenants are here right now, ready to move in. There was a pause before my mother responded. Well, I think family should come first, Natalie. Vanessa and Trevor need a place to stay. Surely you can find other tenants later. And there it was. The same pattern that had defined our family dynamics for as long as I could remember. Vanessa's needs always came before mine. My mother always assumed I would accommodate sacrifice and give in. I looked at Vanessa, who now wore a smug expression, confident that our mother's backing would settle the matter. Trevor, on the other hand, was looking increasingly uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with everyone in the room. Mom, I have a legal contract with these tenants. They have paid a deposit. They have movers coming today. I cannot just tell them to find somewhere else to live because Vanessa decided she wants my apartment. Surely they would understand if you explained the situation, my mother replied. Family emergencies happen. They could find another place. I felt a surge of frustration as memories flooded back. All the times I had been expected to give up something for Vanessa. All the times my mother had dismissed my feelings and boundaries. But this time was different. This was my property, my financial security at stake. This is not a family emergency, I said firmly. This is Vanessa assuming she can take something of mine as usual and you enabling her as usual. I need to go now. I have tenants waiting. I ended the call before my mother could respond. Vanessa stared at me, her expression a mixture of shock and anger. I cannot believe you are choosing strangers over your own sister, she said. Where are we supposed to go? That is not my concern, I replied, feeling a strange calm descend over me. You should have confirmed with me before giving up your apartment. Now I need you to pack up your things and leave. My tenants are moving in today. We are not going anywhere, Vanessa declared, crossing her arms. Mom said we could stay here and we are staying. I looked at her, then at Trevor, who was now shifting from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. I realized I needed to take a different approach. Excuse me for a moment, I said, walking toward my bedroom. I need to make a call. I closed my bedroom door behind me, leaning against it as I tried to steady my breathing. The familiar knot of anxiety that always formed during confrontations with my family tightened in my chest. I could hear Vanessa and Trevor arguing in hushed tones in the living room. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Call me back. We need to discuss this like adults. Like adults. As if it were childish of me to expect control over my own property. As if it were immature to have boundaries. I ignored the message. And instead dialed my mother directly. She answered on the first ring. Natalie, I do not understand why you are being so difficult about this, she began without preamble. Vanessa and Trevor are family. They need a place to stay while they save for their wedding. Your apartment is perfect for them. I took a deep breath. Mom, did it ever occur to you to ask me, before telling them, they could stay in my home? Or better yet, to offer your own place instead? Do not be ridiculous, she scoffed. You know my condo is too small for 3 people. Besides, you are not even using your apartment right now. I am not using it because I am renting it out. I explained for what felt like the 100th time. I need the rental income while I transition to my new job. You always think about money first, my mother said disapprovingly. Family should be your priority. Vanessa is planning a wedding. They need to save money. And what about my needs? I asked. Does my financial security not matter? You have always been the responsible one, Natalie. You always land on your feet. Vanessa needs more support. There it was again. The same justification she had used throughout our childhood. Vanessa needed more. Vanessa deserved more. Natalie could manage with less. As we argued, memories from childhood flooded back. The time Vanessa had taken my prom dress without asking, and spilled punch all over it. My mother had told me to be understanding because Vanessa had been so excited about her first high school party. Or the time Vanessa had borrowed my car in college and gotten a parking ticket that she never paid, resulting in a boot on my vehicle when I needed to get to an important job interview. My mother had paid the fine but told me not to make such a big deal about it because sisters share. Mom, I am not asking Vanessa and Trevor to be homeless, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I am asking them to respect that I have made arrangements for my apartment that do not include them. They need to find another solution. What about your tenants? My mother pressed. Can they not wait a few months? Surely they would understand if you explain the situation. No, they cannot wait, I replied firmly. They have already given notice at their current place. They have movers coming today. They have signed a legally binding lease agreement. Well, I think you are being selfish, my mother declared. I raised you to put family first. Her words stung, but they also ignited something in me. A realization that had been building for years. My mother's version of family first had always meant Vanessa first. I have to go, I said, ending the call before she could respond. I stood in my bedroom surrounded by the furniture I had carefully selected, the paint color I had chosen, the space I had created for myself through years of hard work and sacrifice. This apartment represented not just a financial investment, but an emotional one. It was the first place that had truly been mine alone, untouched by my family's dysfunctional dynamics. And now Vanessa was trying to claim it just as she had claimed so many of my possessions throughout our lives. But this time was different. This time I was not a child who could be overruled or a teenager who could be guilted into compliance. I was an adult with legal rights to my property. A knock on the bedroom door interrupted my thoughts. Natalie. It was Trevor's voice, hesitant and low. Can I talk to you for a second? I opened the door to find him standing there alone, looking uncomfortable. Listen, he said, glancing over his shoulder to ensure Vanessa was not within earshot. I want you to know that this was not my idea. Vanessa told me her mother had arranged everything and that you were fine with it. I suggested we should call you directly, but she insisted it was all set. I studied his face, trying to gauge his sincerity. Trevor had always seemed like a decent person, if somewhat passive in his relationship with my sister. We had only met a handful of times since they started dating 2 years ago, but he had always been polite and considerate. I appreciate you telling me that, I said carefully, but it does not change the fact that you need to find somewhere else to stay. I have legal obligations to my tenants. He nodded, running a hand through his hair. I understand. I will talk to Vanessa. Try to make her see reason. It is just that we really did give up our apartment. The lease ended, and we did not renew because her mother said this place was available. I felt a twinge of sympathy for Trevor, who seemed to have been caught in the middle of yet another situation engineered by my mother and sister. But my sympathy had its limits. That is unfortunate, I said. But it is not my responsibility to solve that problem. You and Vanessa are adults. You need to figure out your own housing situation without assuming you can take over mine. Trevor nodded again, looking resigned. I get it. I will talk to her. As we returned to the living room, I could see Elijah and Isabella through the partly open front door waiting patiently in the hallway. I felt a surge of guilt for subjecting them to this family drama on what should have been an exciting day for them. Vanessa was pacing the living room, her phone pressed to her ear. Yes, Mom, she is being completely unreasonable. I know. That is what I told her. Okay? Are you coming over? Good. She ended the call and turned to me with a triumphant expression. Mom is on her way. She will straighten this out. I closed my eyes briefly, trying to maintain my composure. Of course, my mother was coming over. She never could resist inserting herself into conflicts, especially when it meant defending Vanessa. There is nothing to straighten out, I said firmly. This is my apartment. I decide who lives here. And right now, that decision has been made. Elijah and Isabella are moving in today. We will see about that, Vanessa replied, her tone smug. Mom thinks you are being ridiculous, and I agree. Family should come first. I looked at her, really looked at her, and suddenly saw the pattern that had defined our relationship for decades. Vanessa took. I gave. Vanessa demanded. I accommodated. Vanessa assumed. I accepted. It had been this way for so long that she no longer even considered the possibility that I might say no. But something had shifted inside me. Perhaps it was the years of independence I had built. Or the realization that I had created this life for myself, without their help. Whatever the reason, I knew with absolute certainty that I would not back down this time. I walked to the door, and invited Elijah and Isabella back inside. They entered cautiously, clearly sensing the tension in the room. I am so sorry about this delay, I said, trying to sound professional despite the chaos. There's been a misunderstanding with my family, but I'm working to resolve it quickly. In the meantime, would you like to do a final walkthrough of the apartment? Before they could respond, Vanessa interjected. There is no point in doing that. They are not moving in today. This apartment is spoken for. I saw Isabella's eyes widen and Elijah's jaw tighten. I had to admire their patience in what was becoming an increasingly awkward situation. Perhaps we should come back another time, Isabella suggested gently. Once you have sorted out this family matter. I felt a flash of panic. If they walked away now, they might decide the apartment was not worth the drama. I could lose reliable tenants and the income I was counting on. No, I said firmly. That will not be necessary. This will be resolved today. I just need to make one more call. I stepped into the hallway, closed the apartment door behind me and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking slightly as I scrolled through my contacts. This situation had escalated beyond what I could handle on my own. I needed reinforcements. Hannah had been my friend since college, and had gone on to become a real estate attorney. If anyone would know my legal rights in this situation, it would be her. I hit dial and waited, relieved when she answered after just 2 rings. Hannah, I have a situation, I said, keeping my voice low. My sister and her fiance have moved into my apartment without my permission, claiming my mother told them they could stay there. I have tenants with a signed lease agreement waiting to move in today. What are my rights here? Hannah did not hesitate. Your sister has absolutely no legal right to be there. She is trespassing. You own the property, you have a signed lease with tenants, and you have every right to have your sister removed by police if necessary. Even though my mother gave them a key, I asked. It does not matter who gave them a key, Hannah explained patiently. Your mother does not own the property and has no authority to grant permission for anyone to live there. The only person who can make that decision is you, the legal owner. Relief washed over me. Deep down I had known this to be true, but hearing it confirmed by a professional gave me the confidence I needed. What about my tenants? I asked. Do they have any recourse if they cannot move in today? As agreed, yes, Hannah said gravely. If you fail to provide the property as specified in the lease agreement, they could potentially sue for breach of contract, additional housing costs, storage fees and other damages. You have a legal obligation to deliver the property to them as promised. The stakes were even higher than I had realized. This was not just about standing up to my family. It was about fulfilling my legal responsibilities and avoiding potential financial penalties. What should I do? I asked. Tell your sister she needs to leave immediately, Hannah advised. If she refuses, inform her that you will call the police to report trespassers in your property. That usually gets results. If your mother arrives and creates problems, the same applies to her. This is your property, Natalie. You have every right to control who enters it and who lives there. After thanking Hannah for her advice, I made one more call to the building management. I explained the situation briefly and asked them to meet me at my apartment. Having the building manager present would add another layer of authority to my position. With a deep breath, I returned to the apartment walking with a newfound confidence. Vanessa and Trevor were sitting on the couch while Elijah and Isabella stood awkwardly by the kitchen counter. I have just spoken with my attorney, I announced loud enough for everyone to hear. She has confirmed what I already knew. Vanessa and Trevor have no legal right to be in this apartment. They are trespassing on private property. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Oh please. Do not be so dramatic. We are family. Not criminals. Family or not, you have no right to be here. I continued, my voice steady. I have a legally binding agreement with Elijah and Isabella. They are moving in today as planned. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa, maybe we should just go. We can figure something else out. Go where? Vanessa snapped. We gave up our apartment, remember, because Mom said we could stay here. That is not my problem, I said firmly. You should have confirmed with me directly before making such a decision. I did not think I needed to check with you when Mom had already approved it, Vanessa retorted, though I noticed a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Mom does not own this apartment, I explained slowly, as if to a child. She has no authority to approve anyone staying here. Only I can make that decision. A knock at the door interrupted our standoff. I opened it to find Mr. Peters, the building manager, standing there with a concerned expression. Miss Johnson, he said, nodding politely. You called about an unauthorized occupancy situation. Yes, thank you for coming so quickly, I replied, relief washing over me. My sister and her fiance are in my apartment without my permission, and they are refusing to leave. I have tenants who are supposed to be moving in today. Mr. Peters stepped inside and surveyed the scene. I will need to see some identification from everyone, please. As everyone produced their IDs, I explained the situation in more detail. Mr. Peters listened attentively, then turned to Vanessa and Trevor. "I'm afraid Miss Johnson is correct," he said, in a professional tone. "As the legal owner of this property, she has the exclusive right to determine who may occupy it. If you are here without her permission, you are trespassing, which is a criminal offense." Vanessa's face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. We are her family, we are not trespassing." "From a legal standpoint, that is exactly what you are doing," Mr. Peters replied calmly. "If Miss Johnson asks you to leave and you refuse, she has the right to call the police and have you removed by force if necessary." The word police seemed to penetrate Vanessa's defiance. She looked at Trevor, who was already standing up. "You cannot be serious," she said, turning to me. "You would call the police on your own sister." "I hope it will not come to that," I replied evenly. "But yes, if necessary, I will. This apartment is my property, my investment, and my security. I have worked too hard for it to let anyone, even family, take it from me." The front door opened again, and my mother bustled in looking flustered and annoyed. "What in the world is going on here?" she demanded, then noticed Mr. Peters. "Who is this?" "This is Mr. Peters, the building manager," I explained. "I called him because Vanessa and Trevor are refusing to leave my apartment." My mother turned to Mr. Peters with a winning smile. "There must be some misunderstanding. These are my daughters, and we are just having a family discussion. Everything is fine." Mr. Peters remained professional. "Ma'am, this is not a family matter. It is a property rights issue. Ms. Johnson has legal tenants who are scheduled to move in today. Your other daughter and her fiance have no legal right to occupy this property without the owner's consent." My mother's smile faltered. "I have a key to this apartment. I gave permission for my daughter to stay here." "A spare key does not confer occupancy rights," Mr. Peters explained patiently. "Only the property owner can grant permission for someone to live here. In this case, that is Miss Natalie Johnson." I watched as the reality of the situation slowly dawned on my mother. For perhaps the first time in her life, her authority was not being recognized. Her word was not law. She could not simply decide that Vanessa should have something of mine. "Natalie," my mother said, her voice switching to a pleading tone. "Surely we can work something out. Vanessa and Trevor really need a place to stay. They're planning a wedding. Could your tenants not wait just a few months?" I turned to Elijah and Isabella, who had been silent witnesses to this family drama. "I am sorry you have had to endure this. I want to assure you that the apartment will be ready for you today as agreed. If you would like to wait downstairs in the lobby for a short while, I will resolve this situation and then complete our walkthrough." Elijah nodded, putting a protective arm around Isabella. "We understand. Family situations can be complicated. We will wait downstairs." As they left, I felt a surge of gratitude for their patience and understanding. Many prospective tenants would have walked away from such a dramatic situation, but they were still willing to give me a chance to make things right. Once they were gone, I turned back to my mother, Vanessa, and Trevor. "This is not up for negotiation. Vanessa and Trevor need to pack their things and leave immediately. I have a legal obligation to my tenants, and I intend to fulfill it." I pulled out my phone. "I am going to call the police now if you do not start packing." Vanessa stared at me in disbelief, but Trevor was already moving toward their suitcases. "Come on, Vanessa," he said quietly. "We need to go." For a moment I thought she might continue to resist, but something in my expression must have convinced her that I was serious. With a dramatic sigh, she stood up and began gathering her belongings. My mother watched in stunned silence, clearly unaccustomed to seeing her plans thwarted. When she finally spoke, her voice was tight with disapproval. "I never thought I would see the day when you would choose strangers over your own sister." I met her gaze steadily. "I am not choosing strangers over family. I am choosing to honor my commitments and to protect what I have worked for. If you want to help Vanessa and Trevor, why not offer them your spare room?" My mother blinked, taken aback by the suggestion. "My condo is too small for 3 people." "Then perhaps you should not have promised them my apartment without consulting me," I replied. For once my mother had no ready response. As Vanessa and Trevor begrudgingly packed their belongings, the atmosphere in the apartment grew increasingly tense. Vanessa slammed drawers and muttered under her breath, occasionally shooting venomous glares in my direction. Trevor moved quietly and efficiently, clearly eager to be done with the whole uncomfortable situation. My mother paced the living room, alternating between trying to reason with me and making passive-aggressive comments about family loyalty. "I just do not understand how you can be so cold," she said, for what felt like the 10th time. After everything our family has done for you, I nearly laughed at the irony. What exactly has our family done for me, Mom? I worked my way through college. I saved for years to buy this place. I have never asked you or anyone else for financial help. Family is not just about money, Natalie, my mother replied, her tone sanctimonious. It is about being there for each other, like how you were there for Vanessa by offering her my apartment without asking me, I countered. My mother's face flushed. That is different. Vanessa needs help right now. And I do not, I asked. I am in the middle of a career transition. I need the rental income from this apartment to maintain my financial stability. But my needs do not count, do they? They never have. That is not true, my mother protested, but her eyes slid away from mine. Vanessa emerged from the bathroom with an armful of toiletries. Are you seriously going to stand there and act like you are the victim here, Natalie? You have always had everything. The good grades, the stable job, your own apartment. Some of us have struggled more. I stared at her in disbelief. Struggled. You had a fully funded college education. You have never had to work 2 jobs. You have always had Mom to bail you out whenever you needed it. That is not fair, Vanessa said, her voice rising. Just because I needed more support does not make me some kind of parasite. I never called you a parasite, I replied. But you do have a habit of taking things that belong to me without asking. And this time you have gone too far. Vanessa's face crumpled, suddenly tears welling in her eyes. Where are we supposed to go? We gave up our apartment. We have nowhere else to stay. For a moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Despite everything, she was still my sister. But then I remembered all the times she had used tears to manipulate situations. And my resolve hardened. You could stay at a hotel until you find a new place, I suggested. Or with friends. Or with Mom. A hotel costs money. Vanessa sniffled. Money we are trying to save for our wedding. That is not my problem, I said firmly. You should have thought of that before giving up your apartment based on Mom's unauthorized offer. Trevor, who had been quietly packing in the background, finally spoke up. Vanessa. We will figure something out. My buddy Rick said we could crash at his place if we needed to. Vanessa whirled on him. Rick's apartment is tiny. And he has 3 roommates. That is not a solution. It is temporary, Trevor said, his voice strained. We will find something else. This is not Natalie's fault. I shot Trevor a grateful look, surprised by his support. Vanessa noticed the exchange, and her expression darkened further. Oh, so you are taking her side now, she accused. Trevor sighed. I am not taking sides. I am just saying we should not have assumed we could stay here without checking with Natalie directly. Mom said it was fine, Vanessa insisted. But it is not Mom's apartment, Trevor replied. His patience clearly wearing thin. It is Natalie's. We should have called her. My mother, who had been watching this exchange with growing alarms, stepped between them. Stop arguing. This is not helping. Natalie, surely we can come to some compromise. Perhaps your tenants could delay their move-in by a week or 2 while Vanessa and Trevor find another place. Before I could respond, there was another knock at the door. Mr. Peters had returned, accompanied by a security guard. Miss Johnson, is everything all right? He asked. Some of the neighbors have reported raised voices. I felt a flush of embarrassment. I'm sorry about the noise. My family is just leaving. Mr. Peters nodded. I understand these situations can be difficult. Is there anything we can do to help expedite the process? The implicit message was clear. The building management was prepared to intervene if necessary. The presence of the security guard emphasized that point. Vanessa stared at the security guard, then at me, realization dawning that I truly was not going to back down. Her expression shifted from anger to disbelief to something that looked almost like respect. Fine, she said finally. We will go. But do not expect me to forget this, Natalie. I would not dream of it, I replied evenly. As Vanessa and Trevor resumed packing, my mother pulled me aside, her voice low and urgent. Natalie, please. They really do not have anywhere else to go. At least help them find a place to stay. For a moment I considered refusing outright. After all, why should I help them after what they had tried to pull? But something in my mother's pleading expression softened me slightly. I will pay for 3 nights at a hotel, I offered. That should give them enough time to find a short-term rental, or make other arrangements. Relief washed over my mother's face. Thank you. That is very generous. It is more than they deserve, I said quietly. And in the future do not make promises about my property without consulting me first. My mother nodded. Though I was not entirely convinced she had learned her lesson. While Vanessa and Trevor finished gathering their belongings, I stepped into the hallway to call Elijah and Isabella. They answered immediately. "I am so sorry about the delay," I said. "The situation is almost resolved. My sister and her fiance will be leaving shortly. Would you be able to come back up in about 30 minutes for the final walkthrough?" "Of course," Isabella replied, her voice warm with understanding. "Family situations can be complicated. We appreciate you working to resolve this." "Thank you for your patience," I said, feeling a wave of gratitude for their understanding. When I returned to the apartment, Vanessa and Trevor had most of their things packed. The security guard was helping Trevor carry boxes down to their car, while Mr. Peters supervised discreetly from near the door. Vanessa was sitting on the couch, her expression sullen. When she saw me, she stood up abruptly. "I hope you are happy," she said bitterly. "Throwing your own sister out on the street." "You are not on the street," I replied calmly. "I have offered to pay for 3 nights at a hotel while you find alternative accommodation." 3 whole nights, Vanessa said sarcastically. "How generous." My mother intervened before I could respond. "Vanessa, that is enough. Natalie is being more than fair under the circumstances." Vanessa looked surprised at our mother taking my side, however mildly. She opened her mouth as if to argue further, then closed it again. Trevor returned from taking boxes down to the car. "That is the last of it," he said, avoiding eye contact with everyone. "We should go." Vanessa gathered her purse and coat, moving with deliberate slowness, as if still hoping for a last-minute reprieve. When none came, she walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. "I hope your precious apartment is worth destroying our relationship," she said. I met her gaze steadily. "You tried to take something that belongs to me without asking." "Again. That is what damaged our relationship, Vanessa, not me enforcing my boundaries." For a brief moment something like understanding flickered across her face. Then, it was gone. Replaced by the familiar mask of righteous indignation. "Whatever helps you sleep at night," she muttered, then walked out without a backward glance. Trevor lingered for a moment. "I am sorry about all this," he said quietly. "And thank you for the hotel offer. We appreciate it." After they left, my mother remained looking suddenly older and tired. "I never meant for this to happen," she said. "I was just trying to help them." "I know," I replied. "But you cannot help one child by taking from another. That is a lesson you should have learned a long time ago." She flinched as if I had slapped her. "I have always tried to be a good mother to both of you." "I know you have," I said, softening slightly. "But you have always favored Vanessa. You have always made excuses for her behavior. And that has not done either of us any favors." My mother looked as if she wanted to deny it, but something in my expression must have stopped her. Instead, she simply nodded. "I should go," she said. "They will need help finding a hotel." After she left, I stood alone in my apartment, feeling both drained and strangely exhilarated. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my family and held my ground. It had been painful and messy, but also necessary. Mr. Peters, who had been waiting discreetly in the hallway, stepped back inside. "Is there anything else you need, Miss Johnson?" I shook my head. "No, thank you for your help. I appreciate it more than I can say." "Just doing my job," he replied with a small smile. "For what it is worth, you handled that situation admirably. Family disputes over property can get ugly fast." After he left, I took a few minutes to compose myself before calling Elijah and Isabella to come up for the final walkthrough. As I waited for them, I straightened the throw pillows on the couch, and opened the windows to let in fresh air, symbolically clearing out the negative energy of the confrontation. When they arrived looking understandably cautious, I greeted them with a genuine smile. "Thank you again for your patience. I promise no more family drama. The apartment is all yours as agreed." Elijah and Isabella followed me through the apartment, listening attentively as I explained how the thermostat worked and where to find the circuit breaker. They asked thoughtful questions about the neighborhood and building amenities, and I could see they were trying to move past the awkwardness of the earlier confrontation. "Again, I am so sorry about what happened earlier," I said as we completed the walkthrough in the kitchen. "That was completely unprofessional and not how I wanted this day to go." Isabella smiled warmly. "Family can be complicated. We understand. Still, you should not have had to witness that I insisted. I want you to know that nothing like that will happen again. My sister and her fiance are clear that they have no right to be here." Elijah nodded. "We appreciate your handling of the situation. It actually reassured us that you take your responsibilities as a landlord seriously." I had not considered that perspective. Perhaps the way I had stood up to my family had demonstrated to them that I would also stand up for them as tenants if needed. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. I do take my responsibilities seriously. This apartment means a lot to me, and I want to ensure it is well cared for. As we finished the walkthrough, I handed them the keys and we signed the final paperwork. It felt surreal completing this transaction that had nearly been derailed by my family's interference. The movers should be here within the hour, Isabella said, checking her watch. Is there anything else we should know before you go? I provided a few final tips about the quirks of the building and the best local restaurants, then prepared to leave them to settle in. As I gathered my belongings, my phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Found a hotel. Thanks for covering it. I am sorry about everything. I felt a small sense of relief that at least one party in this drama was behaving reasonably. I replied with the name and contact information for my friend who worked at a rental agency, suggesting they reach out for help finding a short-term lease. As I said goodbye to Elijah and Isabella and stepped into the hallway, I felt lighter somehow, as if standing up to my family had released a weight I had been carrying for years. The apartment was no longer just a financial investment but a symbol of my independence and self-respect. I was halfway to the elevator when my phone rang. It was my mother again. I considered ignoring the call but decided it was better to face this head-on. "Hello," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "Natalie." "I have been thinking about what you said," my mother began, her tone subdued. "About me favoring Vanessa and making excuses for her behavior." I waited, not wanting to interrupt what seemed like a rare moment of self-reflection. "I never meant to make you feel less important," she continued. "I always thought you were so capable, so independent. You never seemed to need me the way Vanessa did." "Everyone needs support, Mom," I said quietly. "Even capable, independent people." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "You are right. I have not been fair to you. I have expected you to always be the understanding one. The one who gives way. That was wrong of me." Her words were so unexpected that for a moment I did not know how to respond. After a lifetime of feeling like my needs came second to Vanessa's hearing, my mother acknowledged her favoritism was both validating and disorienting. "Thank you for saying that. I finally managed. It means a lot to hear you acknowledge it." "I want to do better," she said. "I want to be a mother who supports both her daughters equally. Will you give me a chance to try?" I felt a complex mix of emotions: hope, weariness, a cautious optimism. "Yes," I said. "I would like that." After we ended the call, I stood in the hallway for a long moment, processing what had just happened. It felt like a significant shift in our family dynamic, one that had been long overdue. As I waited for the elevator, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Vanessa. "I am still mad at you, but Trevor says I should apologize for assuming we could stay at your place without asking. So, consider this my apology." It was not the most gracious apology I had ever received, but coming from Vanessa, it was practically unprecedented. I typed a response: "Apology accepted. I hope you find a good place soon." Her reply came quickly: "Whatever. Trevor says thanks for the hotel." I smiled despite myself. Some things would take longer to change than others. The elevator arrived, and as I stepped inside, I felt a sense of closure. The apartment that had been the focal point of this family drama was now in the capable hands of Elijah and Isabella. My sister and her fiance were temporarily housed and would hopefully find a more permanent solution soon. And most surprisingly, my mother had shown a willingness to acknowledge and address the patterns that had defined our family relationships for decades. As the elevator descended, I realized that this confrontation, painful as it had perhaps been necessary. Sometimes relationships cannot evolve until long-established patterns are disrupted. Sometimes growth cannot occur without conflict. When I reached the lobby, I checked my watch. The movers would be arriving soon for Elijah and Isabella. My part in this transaction was complete. I had fulfilled my responsibilities as a landlord, and more importantly had stood up for myself in a way I never had before. Outside, the spring air felt fresh and invigorating. I took a deep breath, feeling as though I was entering a new phase of my relationship with my family. It would not be easy, and old patterns would not disappear overnight, but something significant had shifted. For the first time I had established a boundary, and held firm, and remarkably my family had begun to respect it. As I walked toward the subway station, I realized that the apartment had given me more than just financial security. It had given me the confidence to stand up for myself, and the courage to reshape relationships that had been unbalanced for far too long. My phone buzzed once more. A text from Trevor: "Just wanted you to know I admire how you handled today. Vanessa is not ready to hear this yet, but she could learn a lot from you about independence and setting boundaries. I hope we can all move forward from here." I smiled as I typed my response. "Me too. Good luck with everything." And I meant it. Despite the drama and hurt feelings, I genuinely hoped that Vanessa and Trevor would find their way. Perhaps this incident would even serve as a wake-up call for Vanessa, showing her that she could not always expect others to accommodate her needs at their own expense. As for my mother, only time would tell if her moment of insight would translate into lasting change, but I was cautiously optimistic. Sometimes people need to be confronted with the consequences of their behavior before they can recognize the need for change. And as for me, I felt stronger and more secure in myself than I had in years. I had stood my ground, protected what was mine, and begun the process of establishing healthier relationships with my family. It had not been easy, but it had been necessary. As I boarded the subway to Zoe's condo, I realized that I was looking forward to sharing this story with her. She had witnessed my struggles with my family for years, and had often encouraged me to set firmer boundaries. She would be proud of how I had handled today's confrontation. The train pulled away from the station, and I settled into my seat feeling a sense of peace despite the turbulence of the day. Sometimes the most difficult confrontations lead to the most important growth. And today I had grown in ways I never could have anticipated when I woke up that morning. 1 week after the dramatic showdown at my apartment, I was sitting on Zoe's balcony enjoying a cup of coffee and the morning sunshine. The past 7 days had been surprisingly peaceful, a welcome contrast to the chaos of that Saturday confrontation. Elijah and Isabella had moved in without further incident, sending me a text with a picture of them toasting with wine glasses in the living room once they were settled. "Thanks for making this possible," the message read. "We love the place already." I had checked in with them midweek using the excuse of a forgotten mail key to ensure everything was going smoothly. They had been warm and welcoming, showing me how they had arranged the furniture and already befriended the neighbors across the hall. It was clear they were treating my home with respect, exactly as I had hoped. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my father calling from Arizona, where he had moved after the divorce. We spoke regularly but not frequently, maintaining a comfortable distance that suited us both. "Natalie. Your mother called me yesterday," he said after our initial greetings. "She told me about what happened with the apartment." I tensed, slightly unsure which version of events he had heard. "And what did she say?" "She said that she had overstepped by offering your place to Vanessa without asking you, and that you had every right to stand your ground." He sounded surprised. I have to say, that is not the version I expected to hear from her. Relief washed over me. "That is actually pretty accurate." "Well, good for you for standing up for yourself," he said approvingly. "I know that has not always been easy with your mother and Vanessa." We talked for a while longer, my father sharing stories about his own experiences setting boundaries with family members. He had always been more reserved than my mother, less likely to get involved in conflicts, which had sometimes made me feel like he was not in my corner. But today his support felt genuine and validating. After we hung up, I checked my email and found a message from Trevor. I had not expected to hear from him again so soon, and certainly not separate from Vanessa. "Natalie. I hope this is not overstepping, but I wanted to let you know that Vanessa and I have decided to postpone the wedding." The email read, "The incident at your apartment brought up some issues in our relationship that we need to address before moving forward. I realized I have been enabling some of Vanessa's less healthy behaviors, much like your mother has. We are going to try couples counseling. I thought you should know, since you were inadvertently part of this realization. Thank you again for handling the situation with such grace despite the circumstances." I read the email twice, surprised, but also hopeful. Perhaps the confrontation had sparked positive changes not just in my own family relationships, but in Vanessa's life as well. I replied with a brief message of support, wishing them well with counseling and expressing hope for their future. Throughout the week, my mother had called several times, each conversation a little less strained than the last. She had not made any grand declarations or dramatic apologies, but I had noticed subtle shifts in how she spoke to me. She asked more questions about my life and career, showing genuine interest, rather than just waiting for her turn to talk about Vanessa. In our most recent call, she had even suggested that we meet for dinner, just the two of us, something that rarely happened without Vanessa present. I had agreed, curious to see if the changes in her behavior would persist in person. That evening I met my mother at a small Italian restaurant halfway between her condo and Zoe's place. She was already seated when I arrived, looking slightly nervous as she fidgeted with her napkin. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. "I have been doing a lot of thinking this week about what I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. About how I have treated you and Vanessa differently over the years," she replied, meeting my gaze directly. "I always told myself I was just responding to your different needs, but I can see now that I was not being fair to you." I had waited so long to hear these words that for a moment I did not know how to respond. "What made you realize that?" I finally asked. seeing how you handled the situation last weekend," she admitted. "You were so clear and firm about your boundaries, even when Vanessa and I both tried to push past them. It made me realize how rarely I have respected your right to say no." We talked through dinner, having one of the most honest conversations of our adult lives. My mother acknowledged patterns I had felt but never named, and I shared hurts I had previously kept to myself. It was not always comfortable, but it felt necessary and long overdue. "I cannot promise I will get everything right from now on," my mother said as we finished our dessert. "Old habits are hard to break, but I want you to know that I'm trying to see things more clearly, and to be more fair in how I treat both my daughters. That is all I can ask." I replied, feeling a cautious optimism about our relationship moving forward. The following day I decided to visit my apartment building, ostensibly to collect some mail, but really to check on how Elijah and Isabella were settling in. As I approached the building, I felt a surge of pride. This place represented not just my financial achievement but now also my emotional growth. The doorman greeted me warmly, and I chatted with him briefly before heading up to my floor. I knocked on the door, and Isabella answered, looking surprised but pleased to see me. "Natalie. What a nice surprise. Come in." The apartment looked different with their furniture and decorations, but in a good way. They had respected the space while making it their own, exactly what I had hoped for in Tenants. "I was just in the neighborhood and thought I would check if you needed anything," I explained. "Is everything working properly? No issues with the appliances or anything?" "Everything is perfect," Elijah assured me, emerging from the kitchen with a cup of coffee. We could not be happier with the place. We chatted for a while about the neighborhood and their jobs. They seemed genuinely settled and comfortable, treating the apartment with the care I had hoped for when I selected them as tenants. As I prepared to leave, Isabella walked me to the door. "We wanted to thank you again for how you handled that situation with your family," she said quietly. "It cannot have been easy, but it showed us that you take your commitment seriously." Her words stayed with me as I left the building and headed to my office. The confidence I had gained from standing up to my family had spilled over into other areas of my life. Just yesterday I had firmly declined a potential client who was making unreasonable demands. Something I might have accommodated in the past, to avoid conflict. Zoe had noticed the change too. "You seem different," she had commented a few nights ago, as we shared takeout on her couch. "More centered somehow." She was right. The confrontation with my family had been painful and messy, but it had also been liberating. For years I had allowed Vanessa's needs and wants to take precedence over my own, reinforced by my mother's expectations. Breaking that pattern had been difficult but necessary for my own well-being. As I walked into my office building, I thought about the future. My temporary living arrangement with Zoe would end in less than a year. And I would return to my apartment, but the experience had sparked an interest in real estate investment. Perhaps I would use this year to save for a down payment on a second property, something I could rent out permanently. More importantly, I was committed to maintaining the boundaries I had established with my family. Our relationships were evolving, not ending. Setting limits did not mean cutting ties. It meant creating healthier connections based on mutual respect, rather than old patterns of taking and giving in. That evening, as I settled into my temporary room at Zoe's condo, I felt a deep sense of peace. The apartment drama that had seemed so catastrophic in the moment had ultimately led to positive changes in multiple relationships. My mother was showing signs of genuine self-reflection. Vanessa and Trevor were addressing issues in their relationship. And I had found a new level of confidence and self-respect. Sometimes the most painful confrontations lead to the most necessary growth. Sometimes you have to stand firm in the storm to find peace afterward. And sometimes the boundaries you fight hardest to establish are the ones that ultimately allow your relationships to heal and flourish in healthier ways. If you have ever had to stand up to family members who crossed your boundaries, I will be sharing more experiences about navigating complex family dynamics and growing through difficult situations. Thank you for listening. Take care. Good luck.